Good morning. How's everyone doing? For those of you that don't know me, I'm RJ Davidson. I've come to Southeast my whole life. Um, my Is it not working well? All right. Well, I'll try my best. I can just talk loud too if you need me to. Not it. Okay. Okay, can you hear me? There we go. Okay. Well, good morning. I'm RJ Davidson. I've gone to Southeast my whole life. If you don't know me, maybe you know my family. Russ and Shelley are my parents, and then Bob and Dot Randolph are my grandparents. But yeah, I grew up at Southeast. I am a student at the University of Utah, and I am studying computer science. And believe it or not, computer scientists don't do a lot of public speaking. We don't have a lot of classes on it. But there might be a slow sign up here. If I start going too fast, feel free to yell at me to slow down because I probably will go too fast at points. But anyways, who is familiar with the term backsliding? Show of hands, have you heard of backsliding? Okay, a lot of people have heard of backsliding. I define it as not actively pursuing or maintaining your relationship with God. And I started backsliding a couple years ago. COVID wasn't the beginning, but it's a good place to probably start. Whenever COVID hit, I really just kind of disconnected from the church community. I stopped going to church pretty early, and I also gave up on online church pretty quickly. COVID was very difficult for my faith. I would wake up every day, I would do my school from home, I'd play video games or something, entertain myself, watch a movie, and I would go to sleep, and that would be every single day. So COVID was very difficult, and I was backsliding through that time, but I didn't really realize that I was backsliding. It wasn't very clear at the time, and then some signals started hitting. As mothers do, they kind of know things, and my mom called me down to her office. She works from home. She called me down to her office and asked me how my relationship with God was, and as sons do, I told her, everything's good, Mom, I got it. But not everything was really good, and I just didn't really see that at the time. And then Impact started, that's Tommy's campus ministry. Impact started up again, and I wasn't going to it. I'd been going to it for a couple of years, and then I stopped going. And the excuse that I gave everyone was that I'm too old, and a lot of people bought it. I'm 26. I'm still in college, but I'm a little bit older than a lot of the people at Impact. So a lot of people bought it, and then one night I was hanging out with friends at Buffalo Wild Wings, and Heather and Jordan, Heather's here today, they asked me why I'm not at Impact, and I told them that I feel like I'm too old for it, and they laughed at me, and that kind of hit me in the pride. I wasn't a big fan of being laughed at for my idea, but I got my head thinking a lot, and then that same night, a couple minutes later, I talked with Jonathan, who's here today, and my buddy Dylan about starting a men's group, because I realized that my spiritual life was lacking. That men's group is now going. A couple guys here go to it, but that's jumping a little bit ahead in the story. But I started to pick up in the signals that something was wrong. And then, we jump to the next slide. Heather and BJ got married. It was a very intentional wedding. A lot of you are probably thinking, aren't all weddings intentional? But there was specifically intention from them about making God the center of their wedding. I think a lot of people are told that their wedding is one of the most important days of their life, and I would say that it is. But then sometimes it gets caught up in making it about them, and Heather and BJ did not do that. They made it about God. They centered their wedding around God, and in that they had worship and praise, communion. They washed each other's feet, and multiple times they said the strength of our relationship is that we love God more than we love each other. And that really hit me hard in that moment. God was definitely using their wedding to speak to me, and I realized that I do that I put things above God and people, but things, how do you do that, and that's what I was doing. So that hit me really hard the next day. Maybe the slides are a little bit messed up, but that's okay. So the next day, I called my buddy Julian, one of my best friends, and I took him to Dutch Bros, and I just sat in the car with him for 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and I just told him everything in my life is so backwards. I need to love God more than I love anyone else. And I cried with him there for a good time, and then as God just was probably reaching out to me every week, every day, it really started to show up in my life, and I started to see it. I had scheduled a meeting with Mike, actually, because I talked with Jonathan and Dylan about the guys group. I had scheduled a meeting with Mike to talk about how we could start that. that happened to be like 2 days or 3 days after the wedding, and God used that. And so instead of talking about the guys group, then I was like, Mike, how do I do this? How do I check off from my list that I love God more than anyone else, anything else? And so I was a little bit confused then, probably, because I'm trying to like check things off. That's not how a relationship with God works. And then also that week, I met with Tommy. I had that scheduled as well. So he just started moving. God just started moving in my life. I asked Tommy to be my mentor, and he was like, yes, I'll do it. It wasn't like, maybe. He was very excited. So Tommy and Mike have been huge in my life. Also, I started asking for book recommendations because I love Audible and audiobooks. And so Mike recommended to me God Smuggler, which is a story about Brother Andrew and furthering God's kingdom and trusting in God. And then also Hudson Taylor. I forget the name of the book, but I learned to be content in God. I do this thing where I have my plan and I have God, and I try to hold them both together and make them work, and it doesn't work. You have to be content in God and surrender everything to Him. So all this is happening in my life. I'm double-dipping church services. I'm going to K2 and Southeast. Every single sermon is hitting home like really hard. Like it feels very personal to me. And in just a few months, my faith with God is skyrocketing. I don't know if we can watch the video. It has sound, but this is a good illustration. If anyone's seen The Price is Right. So that's Cliffhanger on The Price is Right. The little Alpiner's going up the mountain, and he crashes at the end. So you're thinking, like, what happened? Well, after a couple months of that, just faith skyrocketing, there was a week that came that felt like I lost it all. It felt like I was in free fall, and that I wasn't cut out for it. I couldn't go on. I remember sitting in a pew in the back over there, and I just didn't want to be at church. Like, I was coming because I knew I should be there, but I wanted to be on my phone. I wanted to block everything out. And I was thinking, like, what's going on? Because it's not that I was angry at God or anything, but I just couldn't be there, So I was a little bit worried about, I don't know, I was just paranoid about coming to someone in the church community here, which is what you should do, to say that something's going on. So I called Dave Roberts. That's one of Tommy's good friends, my good friends. And I went over to his house afterwards, and Josh, who's here today, he was there as well, and I just kind of told him everything that was going on. And I had this picture that I would go there, and I'd tell them everything, and that they would pray for me, and that suddenly everything would just be, like, perfect. I would be just skyrocketing again. And that wasn't really the case. I went there, and I told them everything, and instead of Dave and Josh, well, they did pray for me, but instead of that and them solving my problems, Dave asked me a very important question. He asked me, are you resting in God? And I did that thing, and where you ask the question a couple times while you try to search for an answer. Like, you didn't hear it. Like, you're like, can you repeat that? And you think about, like, what's the answer to this? I did that a couple times, and I didn't have an answer. It felt like such a rookie question that you could be asked and just answer easily, but I couldn't answer it. And so I realized that I wasn't resting in God. And Dave told me that I am a very driven person, that I do things at 100% or at nothing, at 0%, full throttle, or I'm not moving at all. And I found that to be the case. And so I think that kind of ties into you can choose to rest or be forced to rest. And I needed to learn how to rest. And so what did I do? I left Dave's house, and I went 100% at trying to find rest. Throttle open, It's what I do. I need to get better at it. But it's been about a year since then, or not a year, but about 6 months, and I can tell you I'm not a master at rest, but I will share with you what I found in my life. So I think a good place to start is, how do you spend your time? I'm going to share mine. I'm not too happy about it, but I'll share how I spend my time, and I'd encourage you to think about how you spend your time as well. So an average day for me, I probably do about 5 hours of school outside of class. That's like in an average week. And then if you look at my screen time report, this is for those of you that don't know, screen time shows you your phone usage. On an average day, I'm spending about 5.5 hours on my phone. Sometimes that's while I'm doing school, like I have it up on the side or something, but that's a lot of time on my phone. And then on an average good week, I also probably spend about an hour of intentional time with God per day. And that's a good week, I would say, for me. Everyone's different. But yeah, I spend about an hour of intentional time just specifically with God. And what I'd like to ask is, what happens whenever you become hurried? What do you shift out of your work in life, or out of your life whenever you become hurried? Examples of hurry would be like you have family visiting from out of town, or the Premier League, NFL, and college football seasons are all starting. You got to catch all the games at the weekend. But life becomes busy. What happens in my life whenever I become busy is I have more school. Say that I have about 7 hours of school per day. My screen time on my phone stays probably about the same, 5.5 hours. If it does anything, it actually goes up because of the stress levels. I get distracted on my phone. I try to distract from life on my phone. But what does happen, unfortunately, maybe not unfortunately, just bad, is that my time with God goes down. It can go down to 20 minutes or none at all. And the question that I have to ask myself is, why is it this time that gets shifted out of the way? Why does it get sacrificed? I would argue that that is hurry. Hurry is the cause of that. I would describe hurry as the great enemy of spiritual life. If we look at God, God is love. And hurry definitely does not equal love. If you think of love, you're thinking of probably Corinthians 13, 4 through 7, 1 Corinthians. And if love is patient and kind, love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. I don't know about you, but whenever I hurry, I'm arrogant, I'm rude, I insist on my own way, I can be irritable and resentful. Those are definitely not attributes of love. Hurry and love are incompatible. I like this quote by Kosuke Koyama. I don't know, I might have butchered that name, but he says, God walks slowly because he is love. If he is not love, he would have gone much faster. Love has its speed. It is an inner speed. It is a spiritual speed. It is a different kind of speed from the technological speed to which we are accustomed. It is slow, yet it is Lord over all other speeds, since it is the speed of love. I found that to be very valuable. So how, as a culture, do we view slow? Merriam-Webster's dictionary, this is the very first definition. It defines slow as mentally dull, stupid, naturally inert, or sluggish. Those are not very good attributes, we don't really see slow as anything positive. Meanwhile, if we look at the definition of fast, or maybe not the definition of fast, but how our culture views fast, it praises stuff like a grind set. We have a completion-focused culture. If we're checking things off of our to-do list, we're progressing in life. We like fast food, not because it's really good, but because it meets the demands of our fast-paced lives. In the upside-down kingdom, our value system is turned on its head. Hurry is of the devil, slow is of Jesus, because Jesus is what love, joy, and peace look like in the flesh. So I'm going really fast. We'll take a quick time out. I don't want to say that all hurry is bad and all rest is good. There are definitely some instances of hurry. Like if someone in here was about to projectile vomit, you would want them to hurry away from you. If there was a thunderstorm moving across the valley, you'd want to hurry and finish mowing your lawn. In instances like these, hurry is encouraged, but these moments are far and few between. Today's culture praises pathological busyness. We are taught to chase, to hustle after things of the world, the premium car, the bigger house, the perfectly curved or chiseled body, and we are told that we achieve this "I'm better than you" status by doing more. When we measure ourselves with the standards of the world, we pass one hurdle only to see another ahead of us, a new status to claim, a new identity to keep up with. In our inevitable failure, we become bitter, envying what we do not have, and judging those who lack what we have. In this, I would probably define hurdle as the clothes we wear as an idol, the clothes we wear, the people we associate with, and how we spend our time. My buddies Connor and Matt helped me come up with that quote, and together we combined for intensity, crazy, and RJ, so I'll let you kind of assume who contributed what there. But by buying into pathological busyness, we are distracting ourselves into spiritual oblivion. That's paraphrasing Ronald Rolheiser. And this is the quote that really hits home for me in my life. For many of us, the great danger is not that we will renounce our faith. It is that we will become so distracted and rushed and preoccupied that we will settle for a mediocre version of it. We will just skim our lives instead of actually living them. I don't know about you, but whenever I was backsliding, I was definitely just skimming my life. Sorry. I was definitely just skimming my life away. So let's jump on a quick tangent. In the year 2000, the average human attention span was measured to be 12 seconds by researchers. And then fast forward through the digital revolution, in 2022, it's down to 8 seconds. Goldfish have an attention span of 9 seconds, humans 8 seconds. Those of you that know me well, you know that I have an attention span of probably about 5 seconds. So yeah, we're losing the goldfish on that front. Microsoft researcher Linda Stone said that continuous partial attention is our new normal. And sci-fi writer Cory Doctorow said that each time we pick up our phones, we are dropped into an ecosystem of interruption technologies. I know that's definitely true for my life. I'm always picking up my phone. I don't know, have my numbers from screen time, but it's probably like 500 pickups per day or something like that. And we're just programmed for distraction now. So how do we rest in God when our attention jumps from one thing to the next and our lives are full of hurry? Short form content, anyone? If you have TikTok or YouTube Shorts, you know what those are. Like we're literally being programmed by those for distraction. We get that dopamine hit every 30 seconds or so. But we'll go to the solution time. The answer definitely is not more time. If I had just 30 more minutes in my day, I could spend that time with God. How messed up is that question? If we claim to love God more than anything else in our lives, why do we try to squeeze him into the fringes of our lives? The answer isn't more time. Ephesians 5:15-16 says, "Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise but as wise, making the best use of your time, because the days are evil." So what is the best use of our time? I would argue that is rest, and I have the solution for you. It's beautiful Fiji, where happiness finds you. No, well, maybe you can find rest in Fiji, but that's not the rest that I'm talking about. I'm talking about rest in God. And what is rest in God exactly? Is it the Sabbath? Paraphrasing Exodus 20, God created the earth, and on the seventh day he rested. The Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. And Deuteronomy 5:15 says, God commands the Israelites as he brings them out of Egypt to keep the Sabbath day. So is resting in God the Sabbath? I'm going to put a pause on that question for now, and we'll come back to it. And then we'll jump to some Sunday school answers here. You got to follow Jesus. That's really important. Specifically, the example that Jesus set for us. And then I have a list of verses here. These are all the places in the Gospels where Jesus says, follow me. So I would say that following Jesus is pretty important. If we read Matthew 11:28-30, it says, "Come to me, all who labor and who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So let's define yoke real quick. Yoke is like making Jesus your rabbi. It's taking his teaching upon you. So how do we do that? Jesus called his disciples to come and be like him, and I don't want to confuse this with come do good works or come do good things. So if we're going to follow Jesus, what did Jesus do? If we're going to take his yoke upon us, what did Jesus do? So Matthew 5:17 says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." And we're definitely not supposed to abolish or fulfill the law. That's what Jesus did. But Jesus fulfilled the law. And Jesus in that fulfills the Sabbath. So in fulfilling the law of the Sabbath, our rest is now in Jesus. And then going back to Matthew 11:28-30, when we take his yoke upon us, we can conclude that we will find rest in him. So what did Jesus do? What should we do? More Sunday school answers coming up here. We got to ask the question, what would Jesus do? Jesus was intentional with his time. He specifically sought out rest. He sought out solitude in all situations in order to rest and pray. In Luke 4:1-2, Jesus ventures out into the desert for 40 days before being tempted. I would argue that this was to find strength. He went to rest, his place of fortitude, to find his quiet time with God. And then in Mark 14, 1 through 13, Jesus again goes to find solitude to grieve the death of John the Baptist. And in Mark 6, 30 through 32, Jesus sent out the disciples to do ministry, and when they returned, he told them to go find rest and solitude and quiet time with God. And then in Luke 6, 12 through 13, Jesus spends the whole night alone in prayer before choosing his disciples. Jesus' quiet time with the Father was a prerequisite to each part of his ministry. I don't think that Jesus taught about the rewards of that hustle and grind set. For those of you that are not familiar with those terms, they're both used to emphasize the importance of making money and establishing status above all else. Those definitely were not Jesus' teachings. And then in Ephesians 5, 15 through 16, look carefully then how you walk, not as the unwise, but as wise, making the best use of your time, because the days are evil. We need to look carefully how we walk if we want to make the best use of our time, if we want to rest in Jesus. Sorry, I'm going up and down with the mic. And then Ephesians 5, 6 through 10 gives us some guidance here. It says, let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things, the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not become partners with them, for at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true. And try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Walk as children of the light, and try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. What do we learn from this? We learn that rest is intentional. Remember, you can choose rest or eventually be forced to rest. Even as I was growing closer to God each day, I entered free fall, and I was not intentional with my rest. I was forced to rest. I was not intentionally resting in Jesus. So I would challenge everyone to find a healthy rhythm of rest. Rest is a part of your relationship with God. It's unique to you. Find how you best rest in Jesus. There's daily rest, weekly rest, monthly rest, yearly rest, and so on. These are the goals for my rhythm of rest. I like to spend quality time with God through prayer, praise, reading, journaling, social interaction, and quiet time. That's my daily that I strive for. Not each of those every day, but a good combination of them. And then weekly, I try, I'm not the best at it, but I try to take a Sabbath day, a day set apart to enjoy, to just spend time with God. Rest is very personal, and I'd like to encourage you to embrace it. My friend Matt is a big proponent for taking a Sabbath day every week. He spends his Saturdays spending time with God, finding him in all things he enjoys, such as nature, driving, and even sports and entertainment. He believes that finding God in these things, he believes that finding God in these things we enjoy is one of the primary ways that God works out rest in our lives on a regular basis. But that probably leads into the question, how do we know what healthy rest is? I would encourage everyone to start by prioritizing quiet time with God every day above everything else. Then ask these things about other areas of rest. Does it replenish? Does it replenish you physically, emotionally, spiritually? If these questions look familiar to you, it's because Mike asked them in a sermon earlier this year. But they're very important in your everyday life, especially in finding rest. I'd like to invite the band back up, and I'll recap a little bit of where we started with rest. We go to Fiji. Now, I'd like to go back to the slide with John Ortberg. For many of us, the great danger is not that we will renounce our faith. It is that we will become so distracted and rushed and preoccupied that we will settle for a mediocre version of it. We will just skim our lives instead of actually living them. I'd like to challenge everyone here to look inward and ask yourself if you're skimming your life or truly living it. Revoke the hurry and replace it with the gift of rest. Be intentional with your time. Advice that I have for myself every day is to stop hurrying. Stop trying to keep pace with the world. Revoke hurry. Replace hurry with Christ's gift of rest in Him. Questions that I need to ask myself daily are, am I being intentional with my time? In the hurry of my day, am I shifting God out of my life? I'd like to pray. Dear Jesus, I just thank you for Southeast. Thank you for all the people here today. I thank you for just continually working in my life and teaching me and taking me on this journey of finding rest in you. I pray that if anyone here is lacking in rest, Lord, that they need to improve their rest life with you, their relationship with you through rest, Lord. I pray that they search for that, Lord, and find it in you, that they develop those healthy rhythms of rest, Lord. And I just thank you for this day, and in Jesus' name, amen.